Hello everyone, I'm Azortharion, and in this video I think I'll go over this new tier set voting thing that has just been announced by Blizzard. So long story short, if you haven't gotten the news, in Season 4 we're obviously going to get these faded raids in WoW, and that's basically going to mean that we're going to get the loot pools and the previous 3 raids of Dragonflight in sort of one raid tier, if you will. And not only that, we'll be able to have access to all the items from the combined 3 raids, but we'll also have access to our choice, and this is the important part, of set bonus. So long story short is that we'll be able to vote via these polls on what tier set bonus we want in Season 4. And we can choose between the Season 1, 2, or 3 set bonus. And this video is basically going over some of the sims that I've done and some of my thoughts on what you might be voting for. I won't tell you what to vote for, but I can at least give you the numbers so you can make a more informed choice. And yeah, that's basically where we are. So first of all, some assumptions, as you can see over here. My sims are based on Faded being 531 eye level max. I based that on basically going from Season 2 to Season 3. The max mythic eye level, with a few exceptions, went up like 39, 42 eye level, depending on where you draw the line. And assuming that continues, it's going to be 531 or thereabouts in Faded. I don't really think if it's plus minus 5 eye level that's going to make any major difference here. Second assumption is that all raid gear is available at the same max eye level. This might turn out to be untrue. Once again, I don't think it's going to have a major impact. But for example, end bosses tend to drop higher eye level loot than the previous ones, and this might be above this 531 that the general mythic raid eye level is. We just don't really know how it'll work exactly. Then there are a few login items. So Voice of the Silent Star is obviously the Season 2 Aberrus cloak from Sarkareth. That is the only cloak that actually provides more, like inherently more DPS than other cloaks. It does come with a stamina drop, but I think most people are going to take that. Whether it's a good idea or not is something that can be discussed. But for the purpose of these sims, I've included them. Same goes from the seal rings. So the seal rings, and I'll show you over here, are these 2 rings here. So if you played in Season 1, you'll remember them. So from the very first boss, Aeronog, you have Seal of Jonas Chosen, which is basically a fire damage proc when you do fire damage. And BMMM hunters, they have this weapon enchant, it's a temporary weapon enchant called Completely Safe Rockets that does fire damage. So that's the way you'll proc this. It's not necessarily the best for BM because the versatility on it makes it a little bit less attractive. And also, just one thing, ignore the eye level that it says here. It is being simmed at 531 via a eye level override command that you can see here. And this one I've logged in because the stats are pretty good for both MM and BM, but this shield damage, this shield that you get, Absorb Shield, when you do fire damage, also activated by the Completely Safe Rockets, is pretty strong. So they both, like, and for my sims, like, other rings could potentially beat this by like 0.5%, but I figured it's a pretty safe one. And the fact that there's a lot of versatility means that's not going to shift the relative value of other stats very much. So that seemed reasonable to me. And then obviously, we have also locked in Neltharax, which is the only weapon, well, besides the Time Strike one from Season 3, that I don't think we'll be able to get in Season 4. That provides more damage than other weapons as a matter of like inherent effects. So with all that out of the way, here are the basic results. And I'll just go over the gear and the sim in general. But for starters, I've simmed like full single target here. All of them are with the default iced file, which you may or may not run in a practical situation. But as you can see, the results are pretty straightforward. So for BM, Season 2 wins by quite some margin. Also have a lot more RNG, which is a bit interesting. There were slightly different items for trinket choices. So we're actually simming with the Whispering Incarnate icon, and this simmed the best in pretty much every configuration, even if nobody else in the raid is using it. If others in the raid are all using it as well, then it's just like even more dominant. But the next choice here was a little bit of a swap. So depending on your build and your tier set, either Neltharion's Call to Dominance would win. And this trinket is absolutely huge for this set 2 build. And that is because we have a Bestial Wrath, like the tier set bonus, as we can see up here from Season 2, is the relevant part, is that basically you have Bestial Wrath cooldown reduction on Cobra shots, kill commands, and multi-shots. So once you add that to the equation, Bestial Wrath ends up having a really spectacularly high uptime of almost 80%, whereas right now in Season 3, even with like best gear, we're looking at maybe 55 to 60% if we have a good pull. And the way this trinket works is that every time you activate your Beastie Wrath, you basically get this agility proc. Now, between your Beastie Wraths, this thing will stack up. So, like, it doesn't inherently hurt it if you have a longer time between your Beastie Wraths, because you will just be able to build more stacks to compensate. But it seems that this trinket really, really performs well when you have these really common Beastie Wraths. And the rest is pretty much as you'd expect. I mean, the off piece is just kind of whatever. I just kind of locked in a random one here. What actually matters is the 4 set pieces we're using. This high mastery thing, and also I didn't fully optimize the secondaries. Like, they're reasonable, but they're not like absolutely perfect. But the differences are big enough that I don't, think it'll change anything. I didn't treat this like I'm theory crafting for the actual launch of it here. I just kind of wanted to get a quick overview of what set bonuses look the best, in case you want to vote based on player power. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Everything is 531, which is just an assumption, as we talked about. And yeah. And on top of this, I also simmed AoE, which I may have forgotten to reopen here. Okay, here it is. So yeah, this is basically based on a really, really high eye level, or rather high level Mythic Plus. So this is an MDT sim. Ignore the key level, because as you can see, the keystone percent HP has been increased significantly. And this is basically just to get the sim to be roughly 30 minutes long. I could talk forever about MDT sim, but that's not the subject of this video. But all you need to know is that this MDT sim is basically simming a fortified M+ dungeon with medium large pulls. And it's doing it at a key level, or like an HP level that is appropriate for the super high eye level that we're doing here, which is 531. And as you can see, that there really aren't any meaningful changes here. The only thing that kind of changes is the relative balance of BM Season 1 and Season 3. But Season 2 is still pretty dominant on both single target and AoE. So, yeah. Next, going on to MM, all of the same assumptions and everything applies here. And it's also pretty straightforward. So I only simmed single target here, as you can see. There are BM and AoE builds, but they're not MM AoE builds. And as I mentioned over here, so I did not sim AoE, but the Marksmanship Season 3 set bonus is by far the strongest for AoE of all the ones we've had, because it is the only one that has much of an AoE effect. So if you remember Season 2, well, Season 1 had some decent sort of flat damage going on. Season 2, meanwhile, was like this kill shot based thing that had very little impact on AoE. It was almost like the worst set bonus we've ever had. So if you like MM, please don't vote for Season 2 at least. And then that basically just leaves us with Season 3, which is by far the best for AoE and also the best for single target, as you can see in the sims here. Like by some margin as well. So, and I think most people who play MM, they also prefer the way Season 3 plays as far as its set bonuses go compared to previous. So now comes the discussion of, okay, what might you actually vote for? Well, I'm not going to tell you, as I said, what to vote for, but I'll tell you that, in my opinion, if you want to, like, if you're just basing your vote on what do you think will cause your spec, whether it's BM or MM, to be the strongest in the long run, I think you're better off voting for what is strongest based on current numbers. Now, they do say that they're going to update the power of the set bonuses to match the increased power of the new gear in Season 4. Like, on its own, this doesn't really mean anything, because almost, like, most set bonuses are kind of inherently scale with your gear in that they increase the damage of certain things by a percentage amount. But they also say, so any set bonuses you choose will be tuned to be as strong as any others. Of course, this cannot be true, because there are some things that you cannot, some set bonuses will be strong inherently on both single target and AoE, such as the Season 2 one for BM, which is just Beast of Wrath, while others are basically inherently only going to be strong for one or the other. For example, the MM Season 2 set bonus, which is so kill shot heavy, like, you cannot realistically tune that to be as good as the Season 3 one for AoE, because the only way to do that would be to redesign it completely. In that case, it's a different set bonus, or it would be completely ridiculously broken for single target. So, they say this, you can decide how much you trust them on living up to this, but my trust is, like, I'm kind of pessimistic about this. And I think even if you trust them a lot, like, if you were to put $1,000 on, okay, let's say you were trying to bet on what would make BM the strongest, $1,000 of your own money. Would you vote for, say, something that's the worst, and then hope that they, like, in accordance with this sentence, they like over buff it so that if you vote for what's worse now, it will actually become super buffed and become overpowered. Like, that is a thing you could gamble on. I think it's a bad gamble, but that's a thing you could do. Or would you vote for something that is good now and inherently good now? And even if they nerf it, you know, provided that they don't over nerf it, it's still going to be inherently strong, not just because of its numbers, but because of how it works. In my opinion, you're better off not trusting that they'll do this, because partly it's impossible, and secondly, they've proven themselves to not be able to tune things like as perfectly as like they say explicitly, which I think is ridiculous. Any set bonuses you choose will be tuned. It's not like they don't even, like, there's no humility in this statement wherein they say, or we'll try and tune it, or we'll try and adjust it. Like, they say it will be tuned to be as strong as any others. This is literally just impossible. So with that in mind, I think that if you're trying to optimize for power, you should vote for what's best currently. And what's best currently, and based on current numbers and everything, with the assumptions, and I want to like emphasize this before the end of the video, that there are some assumptions being made here. I don't think pretty much any of them have a material impact on the final outcome, but it's something to keep in mind. I think you're better off, if you're optimizing for power, to vote for what's strongest right now. For BM, that's the Season 2 set bonus. And for MM, that is the Season 3 set bonus. So yeah, I hope that gave you some context to decide on your vote. In any case, I think, you know, it's a pretty interesting experiment they're running here. Adds a little bit of extra spice to Season 4. And yeah, so happy voting. And until next time, have a lovely day. Goodbye.